sometimes I cannot believe the life I lead. You know, sometimes I don't know if you've ever had this feeling to where something happens to you and you're like, this is my life. You know what I mean? How has this happened? Yesterday I went to Mar-a-Lago and I was with the president. I was speaking on behalf of Dennis Prager, trying to help raise money for Prager University. By the way, please pray hard for Dennis Prager. He is doing better, but...
what happened again?
He fell in the shower, hit his head, and it snapped
God.
C3, C4. And so he has been on a ventilator up until yesterday or the day before. First time he actually spoke was yesterday because he's been on a vent.
I didn't realize it was that serious.
Oh, it's really serious.
Yeah.
But he's doing better. And he's moving. You know, they thought he could be permanently paralyzed. But it looks like he's not going to be, but he has a long road ahead of him. He's very optimistic. He's Dennis Prager. He's such a good guy. So please pray for him. But they were doing a big fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago, and so I was there, and I was asked to talk about history, bring some history artifacts from the vault. So I did. And yesterday, you know, I don't write my speeches. I just kind of go through the vault, and I'm like, I want to tell that story and that story and that story. So I grabbed a bunch of stuff and didn't really put a lot of thought into it until we started approaching Mar-a-Lago. Because now, if you've ever been there, to get to Mar-a-Lago, you have to cross a bridge. It's this big, beautiful bridge. Well, it's closed now. You don't go across that bridge. I mean, I'd hate to be a neighbor of the president right now.
Or to be a member of the club.
Yeah,
it must be challenging.
It is a nightmare right now. And I'm happy. I'm really happy.
Obviously a good thing.
The Secret Service are a completely different group of people than they used to be. I still want to see changes at the top, but they're at least doing their job really well. So you, like 2 blocks before you get to that bridge, you have to have clearance to continue to drive. And so you get to the bridge, you get final clearance, and then you drive over the bridge, and Mar-a-Lago's on the other side of the bridge. And usually you go by the back service entrance and you go in around a roundabout and then you go through the front. The front is just, I mean, it's like Secret Service, you know, trucks and everything else just blocking everything. When we landed at the airport, I saw his plane. They surrounded it with old school buses now. So it's parked outside at the airport, but all these old school buses are wrapping the plane so you can't see anything except like the flag on the tail. It's the security around him now is absolutely incredible.
As it should be.
But so he is, so you have to go in. And so we come around and we try to get into the back entry, and they said, you got to turn around. You got to go across the street and go through security. And we're like, okay, so we turn around, we go across the street in through this parking lot where they have these tents set up, and you drive into these tents. It was weird. It was almost like a car wash in a way. And Secret Service, you know, guns, everything, everywhere. And you drive in, and they ask you for all your ID. Then they say, any weapons in the car? And that's when I realized I said no. And then we drove on, and I was like, I think I answered that wrong. And so we drove into the second tent, and they make you open the hood of your car. And it's not like TSA. You know, TSA is like, yeah, well, just put your hands up and we're going to scan you. And they're not looking at anything. These guys, they open up the hood of every car. There's only about 80 cars that were allowed into Mar-a-Lago. Usually you can park, you know, across the street and everything else. You have to take a shuttle for like 5 miles. But we were allowed to park. And so we go into the second tent. They open up the hood. They open up the doors. They bring the dogs out. They ask you questions. They're actually 2 of them looking at the engine, looking to see, is there anything in there? The dog is smelling everything. And I said, I may have answered a question incorrectly. They asked if there were any weapons in the car, and they're not. But I'm doing a speech, and I did bring some. And the guy, he knew who I was, and he's like, "Mr. Beck, just tell them across the street when you get there." So we go across the street, and when you get there, Secret Service everywhere,
Right.
and you open up the door, and first they tell you, "Stay in your car." Dogs again. Then you open the door, you get out, and they ask you again, do you have any weapons of any kind on you or in your car? And I said, and luckily, again, they knew who I was. And I said, well, kind of. And the guy went, kind of? And I said, well,
It's not a good answer.
I know, not a
No.
good answer.
Mhm.
And I said, well, I'm giving a speech on history, and I brought some things, and I wasn't really thinking about security when I put them, and I told him, he said, how the hell did you get this on a plane? And I said, long story. But so I said, the first thing I have is I have Braveheart's longsword from the movie Braveheart, his broadsword. And they went, you brought a sword? And I said, well, I mean, on the bright side, it would be pretty hard to smuggle that close to the president.
Yeah,
Okay, it's not like we're gonna have a sword fight.
No.
And they're just laughing, and they're like, okay. And I said, but it's a prop. And he immediately puts his finger in his ear, and he's like, I'm gonna need some more authority up here, please. So all the head guys of Secret Service start coming, and just swarm the table. And he's like, this is metal. This is an actual sword. I said, yeah, but it was a movie prop. It's an actual sword. We're going to have to think about this one. You leave that with us. And I said, okay, this one might be a little more difficult. And they said, then the sword? And I said, yeah. And I'm unwrapping it out of this case, and I said, it's a rat. Now, there's about 15 of them at this time around this table because
Not
they're
15 Secret
Service guys,
agents.
because they're just looking like, this is crazy. This has never been done
This is
before.
like the best story they've had in a while.
Oh, they were taking pictures of everything. They were laughing. They were like, this is now lore in Secret Service. And I said, it's a rat. And they laughed and said, what's special about the rat that you want to bring near the president? And I said, well, it was made by Ian Fleming during World War II by order of Winston Churchill. And they said, okay. And I pull it out of the box and I said, and it has a bomb in its butt. And they said, then one of them just put their head in their hands and went, you have a rat from World War II that has a bomb in its butt. And I said, yeah, but I mean, it hasn't gone off.
I mean, it's been a while.
Right. I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's probably inert. I can't guarantee it, but, and I said, you know, I'm just being honest with you. It's not something, if I had designs on hurting anybody, that I would bring a rat to throw at their feet, hoping that it would go off. I mean, I don't,
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, the rat. Let's x-ray the rat. So they x-ray the rat, and there's wires and everything else in this. I didn't even know there were wires in the rat, but it's all wired up in the rat. Because it was made by Ian Fleming, by the guy he based Q on in the James Bond movies.
Mm-hmm.
And and they looked at me. They kind of huddled around and talked. And they looked at me, and the head guy comes over and he said, we really don't know what to do here.
They've never had this situation before?
Yeah.
Why don't they just look in the handbook? It's not addressed in the handbook.
Yeah.
What happens if someone with a rat bomb
comes in? And they said, we really don't know exactly what to do here. We're going to need to hold these. What time do you speak? And I said, 8:30. And they said, we'll hold them and we'll let you know by 8 o'clock. So 8 o'clock, and when they came at 8 o'clock, I'm getting ready. They're miking me up, and the guy says, "This is legendary, Glenn. I just want you to know, every Secret Service agent here took a picture of the sword and the rat and has been sending it to every Secret Service agent that they know." And so they said, "We have to remain with the sword and the rat." And so there was
that's understandable.
I totally understand.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I totally understand. I wanted to say, but these guys were really on top of it. But what did come to mind was, you missed the guy on the roof, but the rat. But these were all the good guys that are actually doing their job.
I feel like the bomb rat is one of the few things that does stand out more than the guy on the roof. I feel like that one is...
Yes,
yeah,
maybe.
You know,
but if I'm just walking up and I'm just, attending a rally, and I'm like, "You have anything in your pockets?" Yeah, I got a dead rat with a bomb in its butt.
They would notice that.
They would notice that for sure. And you're not bringing it in. In fact, you may be held back for questioning. But I just want you to know, if you're listening and you're from Iran, don't try the rat thing or the sword thing, because you ain't getting through. You're not getting through unless you have a very good story.
So this is the point where you said, "I can't believe this is my life."
This is the point that I said, and my wife said, "Why would you bring the rat?"
Yeah, that is a good question.
And I'm like, it's the greatest. It's the greatest story. And I was actually more worried about the sword as we were driving.
Because the rat obviously is not at the. It's not going to explode. This is not an actual.
Well, as I said that to them, it did occur to me, I don't know. I've never tried to set it off.
That's true.
It is a bomb in the butt. I don't know if it's inert. It's never gone off in 90 years.
You've been carrying it around the country.
Yeah, in a padded box, though. It's not like, "Oops, I dropped the rat." I've never thrown it at the feet accidentally of somebody. And said,
right.
"Hey, let's see if this thing goes." So they're like, "Is this inert?" And I'm like, it hasn't gone off, since Churchill. So,
I'm going to come out and just say you should not be allowed around the president for any reason.
It did. It did cross my mind. It did cross my mind. And then when he came into the room, about 40 Secret Service, there were like 4 of them came in, and they came right to me. The president is going to be coming through the room here in a minute, and we'd like you. He'd like to speak to you, but we'd like you to stand right here. And I was standing right next to a Secret Service guy. And then he came in and I said, "Dude, can we just hug it out?" And he's like, "Of course, we won." And so we hugged each other. And I thought, if I only had the rat.
It's so weird.
Crazy.
It's such a weird situation. I imagine being under the pressure that, and having to deal with actual threats, not you, actual threats all the time.
All the time.
Just around his house, what you're describing, going into his house, everyone that comes to visit him has to go through that.
I'm convinced, and I've paid my fair share in taxes in the last 60 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I am convinced all of the tax money that I have put in and everyone connected with me has put in, I don't think will cover the kind of protection they have on the president right now. I don't think, I can't even imagine what it costs. I've never seen anything like it. And it is absolutely what the secrets, I am proud for the very first time of Secret Service. They are doing an incredible job.
Yeah, and one of the things
I would like to say, I did get a bomb with a rat past them by.
Stop. I will say that one of the things that made me a little more confident, even after all the crazy stuff that happened over the summer, was, Trump was pretty consistent in his praise of the agents, at least around him.
He never said anything.
He was never worried like so many others were.
Here's what crossed my mind. You don't say bad things about the people who are protecting you.
Yeah.
However, I said to him, have you considered adding some private security to this? He's like, no, they have me. They have me.
That's good.
He trusts them.